At 6, huge crowds gather outside Syria's notorious prison near Damascus. They are searching for the missing. A day after the fall of President Assad, families hunt for hidden corridors and cells, hoping to find relatives not seen for a decade. Also tonight, a teenager goes on trial for the murder of Eliane Andam. Stabbed on her way to school last year, the jury is told it was over a teddy bear. Police in the United States question a man in connection with the shooting of a health insurance boss in New York. The Premier League referee, David Coote, has been sacked after an investigation into his conduct. And the Golden Globes. Kate Winslet is one of several British actors nominated for the prestigious award.
On BBC London, why campaigners are protesting against Thames Water's plans for its future, with price increases for customers to tackle its towering debts.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. Thousands of people have gathered outside a prison near Damascus in a desperate search for relatives who've been missing for years. A day after President Assad was toppled, rebel forces freed many of the prisoners who'd been held here in appalling conditions at Saidnaya prison. But former inmates suggested others could still be concealed inside. Our correspondent, Barbara Plett-Usher, the first Western journalist to enter Damascus as the city fell, has been to the prison. Celebrations continue in Syria after the Islamist rebel forces swept through the country at extraordinary speed from Aleppo to Homs and finally into Damascus. We will hear tonight from our correspondent, Yogita Limay, who is in Damascus, as rebel leaders, including Abu Mohammed al-Jolani, who ousted President Assad, say they've begun the process of forming a transitional government. We'll hear too from our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, in Moscow, where the man who ruled Syria for almost 30 years is now thought to be. But first tonight, this report from our correspondent, Fawaz Galani.
This is how Bashar al-Assad left the Syrians. Thousands of them here in Saidnaya prison, one of the worst in the Middle East, not just in Syria, are looking for their beloved ones. They don't know if they're still alive or killed, and torture or hunger.
My son, son-in-law and my sisters have been detained for 10 years, and we do not know anything.
I believe that there is a secret entrance from the kitchen to some place with the hidden doors, and they don't know where it is. They don't have any idea how to get in there.
We urge the prison guards that were here come back and they tell us how we can get the detainees out.
This is the White Helmet organization who brought here from Aleppo and other provinces to help to find any hidden cells under this building.
We cannot confirm the presence of more detainees. We are doing what we can through the help of search dogs, available tools and previous detainees.
That was the BBC Arabic special correspondent Faraz Kalani reporting there from that prison. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Barbara Plett-Usher, who has spent the day there. Describe what it has been like, Barbara.
You know, there was a stampede of people to go to this prison when the rebels opened it up. You know, Bashar al-Assad had an extensive network of detention centers around the country into which many people disappeared, many of them opposition figures or suspected of being opposition figures. And that's why when the rebels would take territory, the first thing they would do, or one of the first things they would do, would be to set people free. Now, in this prison, people had been set free, but there was this belief that there were underground cells, hidden cells, where many more were still trapped. And so when it was opened, you had thousands of people coming yesterday and today, hoping that they would be able to find their loved ones there. And so we walked into the prison, managed to squeeze through the doors when there was a surge of excitement, thinking some discovery had been made, because they were right in the bowels of the building, using a jackhammer basically to hit at the floor, hoping that they could find a tunnel that would lead them to these hidden cells. That was a false alarm. They didn't find anything, but you really got the sense of how desperate this search is. I was speaking to people there and I said, this is a new era. The rebels had led to the fall of Bashar al-Assad. Basically, I guess, asking them if this was a time when they might be able to move on. And the answer was definitely no. How can we move on if we don't have our sons, our brothers? We want our sons and brothers back. And we also want a new country. So very much the sense that they're still in the dark grip of the past era, and that the horrors of the past have to be dealt with if they want to move forward.
Barbara Pletasha with the latest there live from Syria. Thank you. So what of Bashar al-Assad, Syria's deposed leader? Today, the Kremlin refused to say where he was, adding there were no plans for a meeting between him and President Putin. But yesterday, Russian state media reported he was in Moscow and had been granted asylum. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, has the story.
At the Syrian embassy in Moscow, it was all change. Up went the flag of the Syrian rebels to mark the ousting of Bashar al-Assad. Ironically, Syria's leader had fled to Russia, although his exact whereabouts are unknown. The man who has reportedly given Assad asylum was giving out medals to Russian soldiers who'd fought in Ukraine. From Vladimir Putin, no mention of Syria. Events there are a huge blow to the Kremlin. That is because, for nearly a decade, President Putin had poured resources into keeping Assad in power. He became Moscow's man in the Middle East, shored up by Russian firepower.
And I better stop there because it's about to get very loud indeed.
A few years back, we visited Russia's airbase in Syria, Khmeimim. From here, fighter jets were conducting airstrikes on rebel positions. Russian bases in Syria gave it a foothold in the eastern Mediterranean. But without Assad, would it lose that? Today, I asked President Putin's spokesman what would happen to its bases. Dmitry Peskov told me that would be discussed with Syria's new leaders.
Losing its staunchest ally in the Middle East, that is painful for the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin had invested heavily in Assad, determined to keep him in power. In the end, it wasn't enough.
The Russian public, too, has questions about the last few days. I was surprised our military didn't step in to help Syria's army, Alexander says. But it's good Assad's in Moscow and that we don't abandon our guys. Of course it would have been better if the situation had turned out differently, says Yelena. But things don't always go the way you want them to. Vladimir Putin is used to getting his own way. He hasn't in Syria. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
So what is the situation now in the capital, Damascus? Our correspondent, Yogita Lamai, managed to get into the city this morning, and she joins us now. Yogita.
Well, just in the past hour and over the past several hours, actually, we've heard some massive explosions, massive airstrikes believed to be carried out by the Israeli Air Force. We don't have confirmation yet. As far as politically, where does Syria go next? We know that the leader of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Mohammad Abu al-Jalani, has met with interim Prime Minister al-Jalali to figure out the way forward. On the ground, shops, restaurants, businesses mostly closed. We went to some government buildings and police stations in the city. And outside those, we actually saw fighters from HTS deployed there. Many of them told us that they'd actually been brought in from Idlib, the region in Syria that for long has been controlled by HTS, that they've been brought in to secure the city. There is a curfew from 5 in the evening to 5 in the morning, but before that, in the center of the city, it was still very much a second day of celebrations for many civilians here. Hundreds, possibly thousands of people coming in cars, chanting, singing, cheering. posing for selfies and photos with rebel fighters. And there was a constant barrage of gunfire, of celebratory gunfire, such that the roads all around the square literally strewn with bullets.
Yogita, thank you. Well, since yesterday, thousands of Syrian refugees have been trying to return home from places like Lebanon and Jordan, and it has been confirmed that the UK, like most major European countries, has paused asylum decisions on cases from Syria while the Home Office reviews and monitors the current situation. Our political editor, Chris Mason, joins us now from Westminster. Tell us more about this, Chris.
Yeah, a real sense today of a real-time insight into the dilemmas of foreign policy making with the fluidity of the situation on the ground in Syria. So that decision, as you say, from the Home Office to pause asylum claims from Syria. There have been some concern in the House of Commons today from some MPs about the prospect of some from the fallen regime trying to come to the UK. And obviously there's been substantial change. The government wants to pause and reflect and review. And then there is the dilemma about what on earth to do around this organisation that we've been learning about in the last couple of days, HTS. So we've seen the Foreign Secretary in the Commons this afternoon reflecting on the collapse of the Assad regime and him fleeing the country. He described Assad as a monster, a butcher, a drug dealer and also a rat. But what to do about HTS when they are a proscribed terrorist organisation? There was a suggestion this morning from a senior minister that there would be a swift decision taken on whether or not that actually the UK should now engage with them, given that they're a potential coming power. The language from the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary tonight, much more cautious on that.
Our political editor, Chris Mason, thank you. In other news, a jury at the Old Bailey has been hearing how a 17-year-old stabbed a girl to death as she was on her way to school in South London in a dispute over a teddy bear. 15-year-old Eliane Andam died in Croydon in September last year. Hassan Sentamu, who went on trial for her death today, has pleaded guilty to manslaughter but denies murder. Adina Campbell is outside court and can tell us more. Adina.
Well, the court heard that Eliane Andam was a close friend of Hassan Sentamu's ex-girlfriend, but the pair had recently split up and had arranged to meet up to exchange their possessions. But Hassan Sentamu had turned up to that meeting empty-handed, and that's when Eliane Andam decided to intervene and take back a plastic bag that the ex-girlfriend was planning to give to him and run off with it. But that's when eyewitnesses say that they saw Hassan Sentamu chasing, cornering and then repeatedly stabbing Eliane Andam. She died at the scene. A bus driver who gave evidence today said that he tried to save her life and was with her in the final moments before she died. He became visibly upset and broke down in tears. The jury was also shown police body cam footage showing the moment Hassan Sentamu was arrested. He had blood on his trainers and on his hands. Now, Hassan Sentamu claims that his autism spectrum diagnosis led to diminished responsibility. He's admitted manslaughter but denies murder. The trial continues.
Adina, thank you. Energy companies say the vast majority of people who lost power during Storm Dara at the weekend have been reconnected to the grid, but thousands are still cut off. A number of railway lines are closed in Wales and the southwest of England due to fallen trees and debris, and dozens of flood warnings are in place. Chris Page reports.
In the stillness following the storm, this was the sound of normality returning. Trees have been lifted, roads unblocked and costs counted. The owner of this car in Londonderry is thankful that nothing worse happened when a tree came down.
We're just lucky that it didn't actually hit the house with young children in there. We're in a state of shock, to be honest. It's probably only coming around now.
In Northern Ireland, the gales were some of the strongest in recent years.
Well, one of the most striking sights after Storm Dara is here on the coast of County Antrim. Electricity generation was suspended at Ballylumford Power Station because one of the chimneys was damaged.
Across the UK, tens of thousands of homes and businesses remain without power tonight. This pub in Powys has lost trade at a particularly busy time.
It's been a really stressful situation. You know, we've easily already, if you don't even count today, we've lost easily £15,000.
And almost 40 flood warnings have stayed in place in England and Wales. In York, the River Ouse has overflowed its banks. Although the storm's over, Dara is still causing disruption. Chris Page, BBC News.
Police in the United States are questioning a person of interest in connection with the killing in New York of the health insurance executive Brian Thompson. It's not been confirmed that he is the suspect. Neda Tawfik is in New York, and this is somebody who's been held in Pennsylvania.
That's right, Sophie. A potentially significant development in this case. Now, sources, according to our U.S. partner CBS, say that this all came about when somebody recognized the suspect's photo and saw somebody resembling him in a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Now, that's about 4.5 hours outside of New York City. Now, the person of interest was apparently carrying a gun that resembled the gun used to kill Brian Thompson, several fake IDs, including a New Jersey ID, which is significant because, remember, authorities say the person they are looking for checked into a hostel on Manhattan's Upper West Side using a fake ID from New Jersey. And they also say that the person had a laptop. So all of this police are using to piece together questioning this man in Altoona, Pennsylvania. We are waiting to see what police here in New York have to say officially on the record and whether they will in time confirm whether or not this is the suspected gunman. But in the meantime, as I say, a potentially significant development in this case. This suspected gunman's photo has been plastered all over the city and throughout the country as the New York police seek any leads.
Neda, thank you very much. It is just after 6:15, our top story this evening. The frantic search by relatives and friends inside Syria's notorious prison just outside Damascus. And the Golden Globes. Cynthia Erivo is one of several British actors who've been nominated for the prestigious award.
On BBC London, a jury at the Old Bailey hears 15-year-old Elian Andam was stabbed by a teenager in a fit of white-hot anger. He denies murder. And set to be demolished and rebuilt, what's the future for M&S's flagship store?
The US rapper Jay-Z has denied claims that he drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl at a party almost 25 years ago, along with Sean Combs, better known as P. Diddy. Combs is in prison in New York awaiting trial for sex offences. The new lawsuit names both men, with the anonymous accuser saying she was assaulted at a house party after the MTV Video Music Awards. Emma Vardy reports.
Jay-Z and P. Diddy are two of the most successful names in hip-hop. Entrepreneurs and billionaires who ran their own record labels and brought the music genre into the mainstream. But P. Diddy, whose real name is Sean Combs, has been facing lawsuits accusing him of violence, of drugging victims, sexual assault and rape. A number of the claims have been made in connection with high-profile parties thrown by the star and attended by many celebrities.
So Ohio, could you make some noise?
Now, the rapper Jay-Z, whose real name is Sean Carter, is the first celebrity to be accused of sexual assault in connection with cases involving Sean Combs. The woman, who has anonymity, says she was 13 when she was assaulted by both men at a party after the MTV Music Awards in the year 2000. She says she began to feel drowsy after being given a drink and that she was raped by Jay-Z and P. Diddy in a bedroom before running out. Her lawsuits also mention a third unnamed celebrity who it's claimed watched what happened.
Jay-Z has responded to the allegations in a statement from his company, Roc Nation, with offices here in LA. He's called the claims heinous and said the lawsuit is an attempt to blackmail him for money and expressed concern for his high-profile family.
Jay-Z has been married to the singer Beyoncé for 16 years, and the couple have 3 children together. Sean Combs is currently in jail in New York and will face a criminal trial next year for charges including sex trafficking. He's denied all accusations of sexual assaults and pleaded not guilty to the criminal charges. The latest claims have sent shockwaves through the music industry, which was already rife with speculation over whether other celebrities could be implicated in the downfall of P. Diddy. Emma Vardy, BBC News, Los Angeles.
The Premier League referee David Coote has been sacked after an investigation into his conduct. He was investigated over a number of claims, including that he discussed giving a yellow card with a fan before a championship match. He denied the allegations. Here's our sports editor, Dan Roan.
Up until recently, David Coote was regarded as one of the Premier League's top referees. But this match last month between Liverpool and Aston Villa now looks set to be his last as a top official, having today been fired. 48 hours after that game, this video emerged, appearing to show him using foul and abusive language directed at Liverpool and their former manager, Jurgen Klopp.
Absolutely.
It's not been verified by the BBC, but Coote appeared to refer to this, Liverpool's draw against Burnley in 2020, where Klopp was critical of his officiating. Coote was suspended by referees body PGMOL, and today in a statement it said that following the conclusion of a thorough investigation into Coote's conduct, his employment with PGMOL had been terminated with immediate effect. David Coote's actions, it said, were found to be in serious breach of the provisions of his employment contract, with his position deemed untenable. The scandal had intensified when a newspaper published another video that it alleged showed Coote sniffing white powder during this summer's Euros, where he was officiating. UEFA launched an investigation. The FA also began an inquiry after claims that Coote had discussed giving a yellow card with a fan before this game between Leeds and West Brom in 2019. Coote denied the allegations, insisting he's always refereed matches impartially and there was no suggestion of any financial gain by him.
The levels of scrutiny in our modern game is huge. Minimum 22 cameras, the media coverage, social media. And the last thing we wanted was this David Coote issue. It's tarnished our reputation, a reputation that takes a long time to build.
Tonight, PGMOL said it remained committed to Coote's welfare and that he has the right to appeal. Dan Rowan, BBC News.
Campaigners are calling on the government to make heading of football a national health issue. A study had already found that footballers were 3 times more at risk of getting dementia than the general population, and now a new report has strengthened the link. Here's Natalie Perks.
There you go, good boy.
Premier League defender Gary Pallister was one of the biggest names in football. But little bouts of forgetfulness recently have got the almost 60-year-old thinking about the migraines that blighted his career.
I would probably get 3 to 4 migraines a year, and they were quite debilitating. You know, the vision, speech, the tingling, the violent headaches, and it would be like that for hours until eventually I would throw up. I can only deduce that the heading of the football was causing my migraines to be a lot more severe.
In the last few years, he's watched fellow Manchester United players Nobby Stiles and Gordon McQueen die with CTE, a form of dementia that can only be diagnosed after death and is thought to be caused by repetitive head trauma.
So just how worried are you then?
Concerned. The potential's there for me to have brain damage.
A study in 2019 by neuropathologist Dr. Willie Stewart showed footballers are more than 3 times more likely to get dementia than the general population. Today, his new study, which was part funded by the FA, found that it's not lifestyle factors that increase the chances of footballers getting dementia, which begs the question, what does?
These footballers are generally healthy men with good lifestyles, so their blood pressure's good, their weight is good, they're not smoking, they're not drinking, but they've got a real problem with dementia, which is still there. And that, we say, is related to the head injuries and head impacts in sport. That's the problem that we're dealing with here.
The FA has already banned all under-9s from heading the ball in England. Over the next few years, that will extend up to 12-year-olds. The FA says it's part of the proactive steps it's taking to address the potential risk factors which may be associated with playing football.
I think protocols that are getting put in place now would have been ideal when I was 10 or 11. Maybe I wouldn't have started to get migraines. I just know that a lot more has to be done in educating kids at a young age as the potential damages of what football can bring.
Give me the ball.
Natalie Perks, BBC News.
The BBC has uncovered significant misuse of a document called a lasting power of attorney. It gives someone the legal authority to act on your behalf over your money and your health. The BBC has been investigating a partner at a law firm in Essex who was given power of attorney for some clients who say they've lost control of their property and money, with little or no record of how it was spent. Sue Mitchell reports.
For a long time she hasn't been in control of her life at all. I'm going to meet Carol, who I've been following for the last few months as she battles to take charge of her finances. It's kind of a bit windy out there. I have to meet Carol outside the care home because I'm no longer welcome inside after challenging the manager about what's happened to Carol. 2 years ago, she had an accident at home and was sent to a care home to recover. It was there that she met the man who took her power of attorney. Her home was sold and most of her possessions were disposed of. She's now in the process of revoking that power of attorney. Feels as though now I'm back. I'm back where I want to be, you know. Yeah. But it's been hell. She's on the brink of leaving the care home and starting a new life on the south coast. And although you're starting your new life with none of your possessions, it will be nice. It'd be nice just to get out and just to be able to do what I want. The man who approached Carol is Ron Hiller. He's a partner in a law firm, but not a solicitor. He holds scores of powers of attorney for other people too, including Maisie. She's got a lot of character as Maisie, but we'll go quite carefully because she has been poorly. It was an NHS social worker who brought Ron Hiller into Maisie's life, telling her he was a solicitor and would sort out her finances following the death of her brother, Jack. Hi, Coco. Coco was Maisie's paid home help.
I haven't got my brother, I haven't got my dad, I haven't got my mum.
Ron Hiller took control of Maisie's bank accounts and she began to worry about what was happening to her money. What were you worried about, like with your finances? What were you...
Oh, with all these bills coming.
She's entitled to get an invoice.
So she wasn't seeing invoices?
That's right. I think that was a bit disrespectful in that aspect.
Have I got plenty of money in my account?
I'm pretty sure you have, Maisie.
Maisie also felt under increasing pressure to move into a care home.
I remember if it was the first time or whenever it was, he did mention that, oh, it's a lovely house and it would be ideal for my son, which I thought was, again, unprofessional of him to say.
Mr. Hiller, hello. I can see you're in there. I've been trying to track down Mr. Hiller to put some of these allegations to him, but I haven't been able to speak to him. I don't think there's any more we can do. We've tried everything to get answers. In response to our investigation, Mr. Hiller's law firm said, "We always act in the best interest of our clients, in line with our duties to uphold ethical conduct under the provisions of the SRA Codes of Conduct. However, we'd be in breach of our professional obligations of confidentiality if we were to comment on client matters without the express informed consent of the clients concerned, and that much of what's been put to us is inaccurate and is based on second or third-hand hearsay." The system was designed to protect the elderly and vulnerable, but the danger is it could be leaving people across the country open to harm. Sue Mitchell, BBC News.
You can hear more of Sue's investigation in the podcast and Radio 4 series called The Willpower Detectives. It's on BBC Sounds right now. The shortlist for the BBC Sports Personality of the Year has been announced. Footballer Jude Bellingham, runner Keely Hodgkinson, darts player Luke Littler, the cricketer Joe Root, paracyclist Sarah Story and the triathlete Alex Yee. They are all the nominees. Voting will take place during the show on BBC One, which is next Tuesday. Nominations are out too for the Golden Globes, the first film awards of next year, seen as a bellwether for the Oscars. Several British actors are among those in the running, as Charlotte Gallagher reports.
Wicked, one of the most talked about films of the year, could win big at the Golden Globes. It's nominated for Best Musical or Comedy Film, while Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are both up for acting awards. But it's the smaller budget underdog, Emilia Perez, that has secured the most nominations with 10. The film is about a transgender Mexican drug lord.
I'm sure you are, Sister Agnes, but I must see her myself.
Big names like Ralph Fiennes and Daniel Craig will battle for Best Actor. Kate Winslet is a double nominee for the film Lee and TV's The Regime. Eddie Redmayne could add to his award collection for The Day of the Jackal. Denzel Washington has received his 11th Golden Globe nomination, this time for Gladiator 2. And comebacks have also been acknowledged, with Demi Moore and Pamela Anderson nominated. After all, Hollywood does love a happy ending. Charlotte Gallagher, BBC News.
Time now for a look at the weather. Simon King is here with all the latest. Hello.
Hi, Sophie. Of course, over the weekend we had Storm Dara, which brought wind speeds in excess of 90 miles an hour in some parts, including here in Snowdonia. But today, looking very different, much calmer conditions. And that is because high pressure is now in charge of our weather, not only for today, but actually through the rest of this week. So no stormy weather, and that would be thankful. Good news for many of us with this pretty settled weather. So for most of us through this week, it will be dry. There'll be quite a bit of cloud, some fog for a time as well, and it might feel quite chilly as well, particularly across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And it's here tonight, beneath those clear skies in Scotland, Northern Ireland, where temperatures will drop away. There'll be some fog forming as well around the central uplands into parts of Northern Ireland. Further south, it stays pretty cloudy. Still some patches of rain and drizzle in the far southeast of England tonight, but temperatures here about 5 to 7 degrees Celsius, but -4, potentially -7 degrees in rural areas of Scotland. So a cold, frosty start with that fog, which will be stubborn to clear away. And where you keep the fog, temperatures may not be much more than 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. Further south, though, we keep a fair amount of cloud. It should be a little bit drier compared to today. Just some rain, some drizzle in the far southeast of England. For many of us, temperatures about 6 to 8 degrees Celsius. But as I said, for parts of central Scotland, temperature may not get above freezing. Now into Wednesday, this area of high pressure, it really doesn't move very far. And it means that where you've got the centre of the high across Scotland, Northern Ireland, always a chance of some mist, some fog patches with some overnight frosts. Always a little bit milder further south. But you can see from the outlook, really, that mist and fog across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Otherwise, some sunshine. Further south, I think we may just see a little bit of sunshine for a time on Wednesday. But otherwise, though, it's quite cloudy.
Simon, thank you very much. That's it from us on the BBC News at 6. It is time right now to join our colleagues for the news where you are. Goodbye.